Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Hello and welcome to today's Battletech review. Today we're going to be looking at a celestial, well, kind of a celestial with the Tenshi. I mean, it's got a celestial name, it's got a very celestial look, but once you start digging into it, well, that's about all it really has that's celestial-like. The other very key components of celestial, small cockpit, all sorts of fancy schmancy technology, it's not really included in this thing. It's not that fancy or modern of a mech, all things considered, for something that came out at the very beginning of the 32nd century, let's say. It does feel a little bit subdued, especially from Auscarita, who likes to go with all sorts of fancy and weird things. It is actually a really good platform. The main problem with it is that almost all the configurations that are given to us from the box, let's say, are not as good as they should be. We will be looking at a few customs. Of course, there's the Clan Tech ones, but that's beside the point. We're going to go look at the more standard ones. Let's focus on that. And just remember that this is a big Assault Omni-Mech with a lot of pod space and a lot of room inside of it. So even if the standard configs are not to your liking, you can do quite a few different things with it, and I've even seen some with, well, battering ram arms. I won't say it was a hatchet, but it had the same purpose as one. So I personally messed with Tenshis quite a bit. It's also a mech that you can probably buy from the Combine if you're lucky enough that there's one on the market, because it's not one of those mechs that they keep hiding from everybody else as well. So this is going to be an interesting video for you guys that are looking for a new assault mech. So first off, let's remind ourselves of what a Celestial really is. Well, the Celestials were the basic shock troops of the Word of Blake Mani Domini during the Jihad, and they were meant for super soldier and had all sorts of super equipment. They were designed by Devon Vapula Cortland, who used these monsters with some of the fanciest technology around, but mainly a small cockpit and a C3I computers optimized for use with the various cyborgs that were going to use them. We did a full review on all of the Celestials a little while back, and on the first evolution of these Celestials, I would say, or at least the more direct one from the newer trading company. And it's not really a thing that you will be finding floating around, as the Republic of the Sphere made sure that they destroyed every single one that they could find. And if you find one floating around, well, you probably won't even be able to use it effectively, because the C3Is are very hard to use. Small cockpits in those things are actually customized for use by the Mani Domini. So they're not the kind of mechs that you will just add to a roster in your mercenary force or even a house lance, because they're just not things that are easy to do. I have customized and rebuilt a couple Celestials over the years, but it is not a thing that I really intend to keep doing. Outside of that, though, the general chassis and electronics in those Celestials were rather fantastic. They were the peak of the technology the Inner Sphere was able to build, and even the clans probably could copy some of those things and actually make it work. The technology hiding in them was dissected and vivisected by all the major manufacturers in the Inner Sphere, where very few of them are actually able to reproduce it, at least to an adequate level, let's say. Dr. Cortland himself helped out the Republic of the Sphere better understand them after he left the Word of Blake, and this really helped them expand their knowledge of Omni-Mech, expand their knowledge of battle mechs in general, and it really helped in the fight with the Jihadis. Too bad nobody could really take advantage of all that technology for a while, because, well, the Republic is the Republic, and they were kind of a bunch of dicks about it. Now let's look at the other end of thing here. Well, Lucian Armorwork at Will lost its Omni-Mech annex on Lucian during the Jihad because the Black Dragon Society tried to deny it from the Jihadis, and, well, all the different parts of the Combine they didn't approve of. Let's face it, the Black Dragon Society doesn't approve of, well, quite a few different things in the Inner Sphere, and in the Draconis Combine more specifically, which sounds a little bit weird since they're a bunch of Draconis Combine partisans, but yeah, that's how it is. The Dragon society there is a secret society in the Draconis Combine. It's kind of one of those secret society that everybody kind of knows they exist, but they can't really pinpoint who is who or what is what in the Black Dragon Society. They've been around since around the Von Rohr's coup in the 2400s, and they've been working to keep the tradition and the honor of the dragon going. Strangely enough, since the invasion days, they were mostly known for trying to push various offshoot branch of the House Kurita on the throne, and maybe knowing something that we don't. There's a bunch of weird situation and weird rumors floating around the Black Dragon Society and whoever is in charge of the Draconis Combine, and the current leadership of the Combine is, well, directly related to some part of it, but not quite as well as we would want. It's kind of an odd situation, and we might need to be keeping an eye out for the Black Dragon Society, even though they're supposed to have been destroyed by the end of the Jihad. Repairing and rebuilding the damaged lines were a priority for the Combine and for Lucian Armor Works, which dropped a whole lot of money in order to get things back up and running, with basic production taking priority over the more advanced Omni-Mechs, however. So the production lines for things like Jenners and Panthers and, the average things that Lucian Armor Works built spare parts for and upgrade kits for were still being the priority there, while the big Omni-Mech facilities building things like Blackjack Omnis, Firestarter Omnis, and all of those different things, well, they leave those for a later date. They built dozens of Jenner and Lances of Dragons because those were more important for the weekly spreadsheet than a single advanced Omni-Mech, and it allowed them to rearm and re-equip the depleted regiments of the DCMS at the tail end and the start of the Republican era. It's a weird little kind of situation. It was rough for the Combine at the time because they also wanted to keep fighting the Ghost Bears for some odd reason. It wasn't really until the early days of the 32nd centuries that fancier machines started being produced again because, well, they finally had the money and they finally had enough mechs in the regular regiments to start experimenting again. When Lucian Armor Works decided to just go and say, well, we're calling our brand new Omni-Mech the Angel, but in Japanese because we're quirky like that, a whole bunch of analysts, especially in the Republic of the Sphere, started raising an eyebrow. The good news, though, is that it wasn't using a C3i computer or a small cockpit, so it wasn't really a celestial, at least in the grand scheme of thing. I'm also surprised that it doesn't build in a C3 computer. I mean, it could have. The people at the Draconis Combine still use the regular C3 quite a bit, but it's a special thing there. The compact gyro on the machine was borrowed straight from the Archangel. However, if you open it up, you will notice quite a lot of similarities, but you have a higher probability of actually opening up a Tenshi than opening up an Archangel. So there is that. Same thing with the Myomer controller, the basic chassis control weight system. All of those things are basically borrowed from the Archangel, just adjusted for the Tenshi. But outside of that, I mean, it's a Celestial in name only, in a way. It's a brand new machine, and it was actually quite competent, and a lot of people decided to start putting some money down to get them. The first people to get their hands on one of these things was actually the Ghost Regiments of the DCMS, which allowed them to rebuild their command structure from the ground up. You had a set of 8 Tenshi that participated in a daring raid on Grumium, where they stole a whole bunch of clan-graded equipment, which they used to upgrade their own machines right afterwards. Pretty interesting little thing here. Grumium is a second-line facility for the Ghost Bears, not as well protected as it should have been at the time. And, nowadays, I've been promised that if we ever were to buy anything from Grumium, it will reach us because it won't be stolen, because they've got more defense now. Even though it had good early results, the Tenshi did start spreading out, but it was mainly in the end of those second-tier regiments, your Ghost Regiments, your Legions of Vegas, and such, because you had the Shiro as well, which was the mech that was going to be the I praise, I honor machine for the big boys, while the Tenshi was, that second line, not too fancy Omni-Mech that you could use to do some of your dirty work. I'm still quite happy with the Tenshi, while the Shiro I have some reservations on. So just what is a Tenshi? Well, it's a 95-tonner, so it's rather big here. It's in the top end of what you would normally see as mechs, even though we've got some of those ultra heavies now floating around here. But it can easily crush whatever gets into its face. It doesn't use that advanced technology, however, compared to some of the machines nowadays, but it does have a little bit of things here and there. You have a compact gyro to save on space in your center torso and make it a little bit harder to kill in a way. I mean, you're going to get it in the engine more than you get it in the gyro, so is that really that much better? Well, you do the math there. But it is also tied to an Hermes 285 light engine rather than an XL, which is not super fancy and does raise the price a little bit, but not as much as you would expect. You get a top speed of 54 kilometers per hour, which is enough for a mech its size. The skeleton is made of endo composite, which is actually pretty easy to manufacture and manage. You just need to have some parts made out of endo steel and some parts made of the standard stuff and combine it together if you're having a bit of a hard time with it. Or the regular endo composite, well, you will need some orbital facilities to build it, but not as much as you would for regular endo steel. You can basically build it in a, custom-built dropship if need be. You also have 18.5 tons of standard plates, which is, well, more than enough to keep this thing from actually taking damage. 48 tons of pod space is rather massive, but it's not always well used, which is the big problem with this particular machine. But if you look at the parts that are included here, you will also notice that you've got room to put stuff for that 48 tons compared to some other mechs that have, well, huge amounts of space, but no room to put it in, or very little space, but a lot of room to put it in. In this case, you've got a mix of both, which is what you would normally want on an Omni-Mech. Your primary configuration is a tad bit odd, but it will serve you really well as a mid-range brawler and a potential sniper, which is actually really good for commanders, which will enjoy being in a Tenshi to begin with. All the direct fire weapons on this prime configuration are linked to a targeting computer, giving you just that little bit more accuracy that you would need. And you're also protected with a Guardian ECM, making that you, well, a little bit more capable of using that targeting computer and messing up enemy C3 networks, a few different things like that. Artemis are also well known for being popular, and the Guardian ECM does protect you from, well, the increased accuracy on the clustering of Artemis weapons, so not a bad thing to have. Your engine is boosted by a supercharger on there as well, giving you a top speed of 64 kilometers per hour. That's a bit of a side note in my opinion. Now for the actual weapon, your main gun is a Gauss rifle fed by 3 tons of reload, or 2 tons of reload and case 2 protection, depending on the pilot here. It'll give you very good range and power. You're able to decapitate things and just stay in the back and make sure that things go your way. Opposite of this is a brace of 5 light PPC, which is ideal for mid-range engagement, and you are cool with 4 extra double heat sinks, meaning that you're able to, well, shoot most of your weapons without too much issues. Finally, you've got a pair of hip-mounted, lower leg-mounted, it depends on where the pod decides to go, 10 tubes of rocket launcher for a one-time punch when something gets close by. Not the most essential piece of hardware here, but it works. Alpha configuration of the Tenshi, also known as the Dominus, well, not really, I'm the one calling it that because that's what the Blakists called it. It also uses a bunch of Word of Blake technology as its main weapon. People are not always sold on variable pulse laser here. Variable speed pulse lasers are a odd weapon that the Word of Blake did like using on some of their custom designs, and this one actually mounts 1 in the center torso and 1 in each arm. This gives you a very nice point-blank range for your damage, but outside of that, it's a little bit more risky. Supporting this is a rather large 30 rack of medium-range missile. It can be replaced with a 20 rack of LRM if need be. And it is fed by 2 tons of Case 2 protected ammo, which is, well, perfectly reasonable in a mech that's meant to be tough. To keep you cool, you've got 16 double heat sinks and 2 coolant pods, but variable speed pulse lasers are very heat intensive, so you do have to be a little bit careful if you're shooting everything all the time. This is basically a close range brawler slash siege breaker, and it works well in that particular spot, but I'd rather have something long range for my commanders. Now, the Tenshi Bravo is a very weird thing. I hope you like TS EMPs, because that's all this thing really carries here. Each arm mounts one of the big EMP weapon, so with 2 of them, you might actually be able to score it and then have it actually shut the enemy down. That's the biggest problem with these fancy EMP weapons. Even if you hit, you might not actually have the end result that you want, and it doesn't deal like chip damage like some other weapons do, like a plasma rifle, as an example. It will generate heat, but it will also generate some damage, so that's pretty good. A clan plasma cannon generates a whole lot of heat, but no damage. But it's still something that's always going to be there and affect the other guy because, well, at some point, a mech doesn't like running hot. An EMP weapon, once you're hit by it, if it doesn't actually fry anything, the end result is, well, the energy's going to the ground and you're not affected. To complement those, however, you get a streak 6 tube of SRM in each arm, which is, well, quite reasonable for a short-range punch. Mobility is enhanced with a full set of jump jets, giving you a range of 90 meters, so you are able to bring those EMP weapons to bear. And supporting all of this is a massive heavy PPC in the side torso, with 2 medium pulse lasers as well for close-range engagement. You will see pretty soon that there is a better option. Bravo Enhanced is the offensive rebuild of this, replacing the TS EMPs with a pair of snub-nose PPC, giving you, well, very good brawling potential. The medium pulse lasers can also be swapped with medium X pulse lasers, giving you a little bit more range overall. I've also seen people move out those medium pulse laser for ER medium lasers and replace the snub-nose with regular PPCs. I've seen it quite a few different rebuilds of this here, but the most common one is pair of snub-nose, pair of medium X-Pulse, giving you just that medium engagement range that you would want. Even more aggressive warrior will replace the Streak 6 tube of SRM with Apollo-guided MRM-10s, giving you better mid-range engagement potential once again. So with all of that combined, you become a very competent mid-range brawler. With the spare ton that you have, you take a case 2 and you put all the MRM ammo in, meaning that if you lose a side torso, you lose all of your MRM. But if you lost a side torso on a Tenshi, you probably want to be retreating anyways. Enhancements to MRM that have been done recently as well does make this a little bit more aggressive than you would think. The MRM are a little bit more accurate than they used to be now, in the past. Then you've got the Charlie/Romeo configuration, which is in its own category, and I will doubt its effectiveness in the long run, but that's just me. Each side torso mounts the Titaness extended range 20 rack LRM, which lets you fire basically from one end of the battlefield to the other, at the cost of not being able to engage anything at closer range. To compensate for this, you have 2 ER medium lasers mounted in each arm and 1 in the center torso, which is a good trade, but I mean, I'd rather have, LRMs that work, that are a little bit smaller and more weapons. The Romeo configuration of this do exist where they use ER medium lasers scavenged from Clan Novacat in order to upgrade that thing. And at that point, well, 5 Clan ER medium lasers is quite aggressive and quite decent, but you still have those extended range LRM, which basically won't be able to engage the mechs your ER medium lasers are able to engage because of those minimum range. Maybe an enhanced LRM would have been a little bit better. I'm not sold on that particular model either. The 8 Tenshis that actually went to Grumium originally came back with a whole lot of clan gear, and they made a special configuration just for them. The arm replaces the Gauss rifle with an Hyper Assault Gauss 30, giving you, well, a very nice punch and a very nice anti-air potential. And for more overall damage, they replaced the light PPCs with a whole bunch of medium pulse lasers. Finally, the IP launchers are replaced with Clan 10 rack of LRMs instead, giving you, well, very nice range and very nice damage potential. Those are, well, basically 8 unique machines. Anybody could really copy that as long as they add the parts for it, which would be, well, a little bit expensive in the long run. And the other end of things, well, you've got the various Tenshis used by the Legion of Vega, which are now being called the Tenshi Victor because, well, it doesn't go in the standard order here. It's the Legion of Vega machine, so Victor kind of makes sense. At least that's what analysts call it, and the Legion of Vega themselves call it. Each arm carries a massive gun with a Gauss rifle on one side with 3 tons of reload, kind of like your original, but rather than a brace of light PPC, well, you've got a big heavy PPC on the other side. You've got 2 head-capping weapon, and, well, one of them might be explosive, the other one's just going to be able to do a whole lot of damage. To top this off, you add 2 arm-mounted medium lasers, sometimes ER if the pilot is feeling like he likes to cook himself, to support that PPC, and another one is the center torso. All of that is guided by a targeting computer once again, giving you pretty darn good accuracy. Your legs still mount missile launchers on top of things, in this case a rack of 5 tubes of LRM, giving you a little bit more long-lasting power than the rocket launcher and a little bit of indirect fire or battlefield shaping capability. This, in my opinion, should probably have been your primary Tenshi, and it will probably become the primary Tenshi if the Legion of Vega keeps being the biggest user of that darn thing. Your Tenshi is a solid platform overall, all things considered. Honestly, some of the configurations are not that great and can easily be modified and enhanced, and even though it's not the fastest thing around, you've got a massive load capacity and the space to use it. It's not cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not also as expensive as some of the more advanced assault mechs that are floating around these days. Things with XXL engines, as an example, you could probably buy an entire lance of Tenshi for the price of one. Or things with the fancy ferrolamellar Arden armor, all those things that the wolves really like. Well, the Tenshi doesn't have it, and it's probably easier to use. It's a proper choice if you can get your hands on one, and it's not terribly difficult to put an order in and maybe receive it a few months, few years down the line. You have to be friends with Lucian Armor Work or friend with a supplier of Lucian Armor Works, but it's not the hardest thing to do unless you're scared that someone from the Black Dragon Society might go and catch you. So I thank you very much for listening to me for so long. I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.